There was a time when going out to eat meant never leaving your car, and the 1950s marked the golden age of the drive-in restaurant. If you were lucky enough to experience it, you know it was nothing like what we have today. Behind the burgers and car hops, these places had strange secrets, from dangerous working conditions to coded systems most customers never noticed. So, here are 20 weird facts about 1950s drive-ins you probably didn't know. Car hops on roller skates were actually dangerous. When you picture a 1950s drive-in restaurant, you probably imagine a smiling car hop gliding gracefully between cars on roller skates, balancing a tray stacked with burgers, fries, and milkshakes. It looked effortless and fun from the outside, but the reality was far more intense. Roller skating car hops, almost always women, worked in parking lots crowded with moving cars, navigating uneven gravel, potholes, and tight spaces while carrying heavy trays. Injuries like sprained ankles, broken wrists, and brutal road rash were incredibly common, and many car hops burned through multiple pairs of skates every summer. Insurance companies even charged drive-ins higher premiums because of how dangerous the job was. To make things worse, many restaurants required car hops to bring their own skates. And if you couldn't skate well, you didn't get the job. Some drive-ins even held skating auditions where applicants had to skate backward, balance a loaded tray, and take orders simultaneously. Basically a sports tryout for minimum wage work, and the hazards didn't end once they got hired. Car hops constantly dodged customers who swung car doors open without looking, or drivers who backed up suddenly, making getting clipped or hit an everyday risk. The glamorous image was real, but the danger behind it was very real too. Drive-ins had their own language. If you worked at a 1950s drive-in, you had to learn an entirely new language, one built not on customer service niceties, but on rapid-fire slang used by car hops and kitchen crews. A hamburger became a tube steak, a fully loaded one was dragged through the garden, and cheese was a blanket, turning a cheeseburger into a tube steak with a blanket. Drinks had their own codes too. Black coffee was blind, chocolate milk was a brown cow, vanilla shakes were white cows, and root beer, oddly enough, was dog soup. Even fries changed names depending on the region, from shoestrings to strips to Idahos, with extra crispy orders called burned around the edges. Car hops also use number systems to shout quantities without chaos, especially during peak Friday and Saturday rushes. New employees had to master this fast-paced dialect quickly, or get overwhelmed by the coded chatter flying across the lot. While a few of these terms trickled into broader American lingo, most vanished as drive-ins declined in the 60s and 70s, taking an entire mini language with them. The tray that hooked to your window was revolutionary. When drive-ins first introduced metal window trays, they were considered cutting-edge technology compared to the old system of car hops balancing everything on traditional serving trays. Invented in the late 1930s but perfected in the booming drive-in era of the 50s, these trays hooked onto a partially rolled-down window with a padded metal clamp that protected a car's paint, something drivers cared about deeply. What most people never realized was that these trays were engineered specifically for the window shapes of 50s cars, and as auto designs changed in the 60s and 70s, the trays fit less securely, contributing to the decline of classic drive-ins. The trays had to be perfectly balanced too. Car hops learned exactly how to arrange burgers, fries, and shakes so nothing would tip, and many restaurants even limited how much food a single tray could hold. Customers had rules of their own. You couldn't roll your window up or down once the tray was attached, couldn't open your door, and removing the tray yourself was considered both rude and risky. If you needed something, you signaled a car hop with your headlights or horn. For all the nostalgia about simplicity, the window tray system actually required trust and cooperation between customer and car hop, a delicate dance you won't find in modern fast food. You could order almost anything. When people picture a 1950s drive-in, they imagine burgers, fries, and milkshakes. But the menus were far more extensive than modern fast food offerings. Many drive-ins served full restaurant-style meals, including fried chicken, meatloaf, pot roast, liver and onions, or even steak dinners, all delivered right to your car. Coastal locations offered seafood like fried shrimp, clam strips, oysters, and fish and chips, while regional specialties ranged from southern catfish and hush puppies to New England's lobster rolls and clam chowder. Breakfast was common too, with eggs, bacon, pancakes, and full morning platters available long before drive-through chains thought of it. Drinks and desserts were equally impressive. Beyond sodas and shakes, you could order fresh squeezed lemonade, real fruit smoothies, banana splits, sundaes, floats, and even full coffee service, sometimes with the whole pot brought to your car so you could enjoy refills without leaving your seat. What made all of this even more remarkable was the tiny size of the kitchens producing it. Many were no larger than a bedroom, yet cooks managed dozens of dishes at once during peak hours. These large menus were possible because customers expected to wait 15 or 20 minutes for their food. Only later, when fast food chains streamlined everything for speed and consistency, did shorter menus replace the restaurant-style variety that defined the golden age of drive-ins. Drive-ins were segregated. One of the darker truths about 1950s drive-ins is that many of them, especially in the South, were segregated. In some places, African-American customers weren't served at all. In others, they were restricted to separate parking areas or allowed only to order takeout. Segregation also shaped employment. Carhops were almost always white women, while black workers were pushed into kitchen jobs out of public view, a pattern that held even in states without legally mandated segregation. Some drive-ins resisted integration even after the Civil Rights Act, closing down or using discriminatory tactics to discourage black customers. The great irony is that drive-in culture was deeply influenced by African-American music, slang, and style. Yet the very people who shaped the era were often excluded from the spaces that celebrated it. The uniform rules were strict. If you wanted to work as a car hop at a 1950s drive-in, you had to follow extremely rigid rules about your appearance and uniform. These weren't suggestions, they were requirements, and if you showed up to work, not meeting the standards, you could be sent home without pay, or even fired. The typical car hop uniform consisted of a short-sleeved button-up shirt, or blouse usually in a bright color, or with the restaurant's logo emblazoned across it, matching shorts or a skirt that hit right above the knee, white socks folded down, just so, and either saddle shoes or the aforementioned roller skates. Many restaurants also required car hops to wear a small hat or visor, often tilted at a specific angle, but the rules went far beyond just wearing the uniform. Your hair had to be styled a certain way, usually in a ponytail or with curls pinned back. Makeup was mandatory, but it had to be the right kind. Bright lipstick was required, but too much eye makeup was forbidden. Fingernails had to be clean and painted, but not with dark or unusual colors. Jewelry was limited to small earrings and maybe a watch weight. Restrictions were openly enforced at many drive-ins. Car hops were expected to maintain a certain figure, and management would actually weigh employees regularly. If you gained too much weight, you could be put on probation or fired. This kind of policy would be completely illegal today, but in the 1950s, it was considered normal and even necessary for maintaining the restaurant's image. Some drive-ins had rules about personal hygiene that seem intrusive by today's standards. Car hops were told what kind of deodorant and perfume they could wear, how often they needed to wash their hair, and even what kind of toothpaste they should use. Anything that might affect how they smelled to customers was fair game for management to regulate the uniform, and appearance requirements were particularly strict, because car hops were the face of the restaurant. They were what customers saw and interacted with, and drive-in owners knew that a big part of their appeal was the image of the all-American girl serving you in your car. It was wholesome, it was attractive, and it was carefully manufactured. Male carhops existed, but they were rare, and they had their own set of uniform requirements, usually involving slacks and a button-up shirt with a bow tie. Their appearance rules were slightly less strict, but they still had to maintain the clean-cut look that drive-ins wanted to project. Wearing the uniform correctly was also a matter of safety. Loose clothing could get caught on car doors or door handles. Jewelry could scratch customers' cars, and impractical shoes made it harder to navigate the parking lot safely. But even beyond safety concerns, the uniform was about creating and maintaining an image, one that drive-ins felt was essential to their success. Teenagers basically lived there. If you were a teenager in the 1950s, your social life probably revolved around the local drive-in restaurant. It wasn't just a place to eat. It was where you went to see and be seen, to show off your car, to flirt, and to find out what was happening in your social circle. Teenagers would spend entire evenings at drive-ins, sometimes ordering nothing more than a Coke, just so they could hang out. Friday and Saturday nights were the big nights, and drive-ins would be absolutely packed with teenagers. Some people would arrive as early as 5 or 6 in the evening and stay until closing time, which was often 11 p.m. or even midnight. You'd park your car, cruise around the lot a few times to see who else was there, and then settle into a spot where you could watch the action. The drive-in parking lot had its own social hierarchy. Certain spots were more desirable than others, usually the ones near the entrance where everyone could see your car. The cool kids got these spots, and everyone else had to park in the less visible areas. Being able to park in a prime spot meant you had status among your peers. Groups of friends would often pile into one car to save money. Sometimes you'd have 6 or 7 teenagers crammed into a vehicle that was designed for 4. The car hops knew exactly what was going on, but as long as someone was ordering food, they usually didn't make a fuss. It was just part of the drive-in culture. Cruising was a big part of the whole scene. You wouldn't just stay in one spot all night. You'd drive slowly through the parking lot, multiple times, showing off your car, seeing who else had arrived, and making sure everyone saw you. Some teenagers would leave the drive-in, drive around the block a few times, and then come back just to make another entrance. The music was a huge part of the appeal. Most teenagers had their radios on, tuned to the same station. So the parking lot became this weird outdoor concert with dozens of cars all playing the same songs. The drive-in was where you heard the latest hits, where you found out about new artists, and where you shared your favorite music with your friends. For many teenagers, the drive-in was their first taste of independence, away from parents and able to socialize freely. It was a space that belonged to young people where adults were present, but mostly in the background. It's no wonder that so many people who grew up in the 50s have such strong memories of drive-in restaurants. They were central to the teenage experience in a way that's hard to replicate today. The intercom system changed everything. Before the 1950s, most drive-ins relied on car hops coming to your car to take your order. But as drive-ins got busier and labor costs increased, restaurant owners started looking for ways to make the process more efficient. The solution was the intercom system, and it fundamentally changed how drive-ins operated. The early intercom systems were pretty basic. You'd pull up to a speaker box, push a button, and place your order with someone inside the restaurant. Then a car hop would bring your food out when it was ready. It doesn't sound revolutionary, but at the time, it was a game changer. It meant one person could take orders from multiple cars simultaneously. Instead of car hops having to walk from car to car, the sound quality of these early intercoms was terrible. Customers complained constantly about not being able to hear or understand what was being said. Back to them, static feedback and wind noise made communication difficult, and orders were frequently wrong because someone misheard something on the intercom. Drive-ins had to put up signs with instructions on how to use the intercom properly. Speak clearly. Don't shout. Make sure your radio is off, and wait for the person on the other end to acknowledge you before you start ordering. It seems obvious now, but in the early days of intercom, ordering people didn't know how to use the technology. Some customers hated the impersonal nature of the intercom system, Part of the appeal of drive-ins had been the personal interaction with car hops being able to flirt or joke around while ordering. Now you were just talking to a disembodied voice coming through a crackling speaker. It felt cold and mechanical to many people, but from a business standpoint, the intercom made perfect sense. It was faster, it was more efficient, and it reduced labor costs. You didn't need as many car hops on duty because they were just delivering food, not taking orders. This efficiency helped drive-ins serve more customers during peak hours, which meant more profit. The intercom system was also a precursor to what would eventually become the drive-through window. Once restaurants figured out they could take orders remotely, the next logical step was to hand the food out through a window, rather than having someone bring it to your car. This evolution from traditional drive-in to drive-through happened gradually throughout the 1960s. Drive-ins had a pecking order. Not all drive-ins were created equal. There was a definite hierarchy among these restaurants, and if you grew up in the 50s, you knew exactly where each one ranked in your town or city. The factors that determined a drive-in's status were complicated and involved everything from location to the quality of the food to who hung out there at the top of the hierarchy. Were the big-name drive-ins the ones that were part of regional or national chains? Places like A&W, Dog, N, Sud, or the early McDonald's locations. These restaurants had brand recognition, advertising budgets, and consistent quality. If you told someone you were meeting them at one of these places, they knew exactly what to expect. Next came the locally owned drive-ins that had been around for years and had built up a reputation. These were the institutions, the places where your parents had hung out. When they were teenagers, these drive-ins succeeded on their reputation and their connection to the community. They might not have had the flash of the chain restaurants, but they had something more important: loyalty. Then there were the newer local drive-ins trying to make a name for themselves. These places often had to work harder to attract customers. They'd offer unique menu items, have special promotions, or try to create a distinct atmosphere that set them apart. Some of these upstarts eventually became institutions themselves, while others faded away. After a year or two, at the bottom were the struggling drive-ins, the ones with poor locations, bad reputations, or inconsistent quality. These were the places you only went to if everywhere else was too crowded or if you were really desperate. They might have had cheaper prices, but there was usually a reason for that. The pecking order wasn't just about the restaurants themselves. It was also about who went there. Some drive-ins were where the popular kids hung out. Others were for the greasers or hot rodders. Still others attracted families or an older crowd. If you were a teenager, your choice of drive-in said something about who you were and what social group you belonged to. Being seen at the right drive-in could actually affect your social standing. Going to the popular place meant you were part of the in crowd. Hanging out at a lesser drive-in might mark you as an outsider. It sounds superficial, and it absolutely was. But that's how teenage social dynamics worked. Location was hugely important. Drive-ins that were easily accessible right off main roads or highways had a natural advantage. They could attract both locals and people passing through. Conversely, drive-ins in inconvenient locations had to work much harder to get customers. The food was actually made fresh. Here's something that might surprise you if you only know modern fast food. The food at 1950s drive-ins was actually made fresh to order. This wasn't like today where most items are pre-made or assembled from pre-cooked components. When you ordered a burger at a drive-in, they started with raw ground beef, formed a patty, and cooked it. Right then, the kitchens at drive-ins were real kitchens, with griddles, fryers, and grills, where actual cooking took place. Potatoes were hand-cut into French fries, everyday milkshakes were made with real ice cream and milk, not from a pre-made mix. Onion rings were battered and fried to order, and everything was prepared by cooks who actually knew how to cook. This meant the food took longer to prepare, but it also meant it tasted better. The burgers were juicy, the fries were crispy, and the shakes were thick and creamy. People who remember eating at drive-ins in the 50s often say the food was superior to what you get at fast food chains today, and they're probably right. drive-ins would receive deliveries of fresh ingredients multiple times per week. They didn't have the massive freezers and storage capacity that modern restaurants have. So they had to use ingredients quickly before they spoiled. This forced them to maintain high turnover and keep things fresh. The cooks at drive-ins took pride in their work. Many of them had worked in traditional restaurants before, and they brought that level of skill and care to drive-in cooking. Being a drive-in cook was actually considered a legitimate profession, not just a minimum wage job for teenagers. Quality control was important to drive-in owners because they knew their reputation depended on it. Word of mouth was everything in the 1950s. If your food was consistently good, people would come back and tell their friends. If it was bad, everyone in town would know about it. Within a week, the fresh food approach did have downsides. It was more expensive, required skilled labor, and meant longer wait times during busy periods. These factors eventually contributed to the decline of traditional drive-ins and the rise of fast food chains that prioritize speed and cost savings over quality. But if you were lucky enough to eat at a good drive-in in the 1950s, you experienced something that's become increasingly rare: truly freshly prepared food, served quickly in a casual setting. It was a sweet spot that combined convenience with quality, a combination that's proven difficult to maintain in the modern fast food era. Tipping was completely different. The etiquette around tipping at drive-in restaurants was weird and inconsistent compared to what we're used to today. There were no clear rules about how much to tip, or even whether you were supposed to tip. And all this confusion led to a lot of awkward situations, and sometimes conflicts between customers and car hops. Some people tipped generously, especially if they were trying to impress a date or show off in front of friends. A quarter tip on a $2 order was considered pretty good in the 1950s when you consider that quarters had real buying power back then. But plenty of customers didn't tip at all, and technically they weren't obligated to. Since car hops did receive an hourly wage, the amount you tipped often depended on whether you were a regular customer. Regulars who came to the same drive-in frequently often had favorite car hops who would give them better service. These customers typically tipped more consistently because they knew they'd be back and wanted to maintain that relationship. Teenagers were notorious for being bad tippers. They'd pool their money to buy one order of fries and a few Cokes, and then sit in the parking lot for hours without ordering anything else. The car hops knew this and would often give teenage customers slower service as a result. The teenagers would complain about the poor service, which they didn't realize they had brought on themselves. By not tipping, some car hops developed strategies to encourage better tips. They'd be extra friendly, remember regular customers' orders, or throw in an extra napkin or straw. These little touches could make the difference between getting a tip and getting stiffed. The tipping culture also varied by region. In some parts of the country, tipping car hops was expected and built into the social contract. In other areas, it was seen as optional or even unusual. This geographic variation made things confusing for travelers who might tip too much or too little without realizing it. Drive-in owners had mixed feelings about tipping. On one hand, tips helped them pay car hops less in base wages. On the other hand, the inconsistency of tips could make it hard to keep good employees. If a car hop had a bad night with stingy customers, they might quit and find another job. Drive-ins were blamed for juvenile delinquency. During the 1950s, there was a growing moral panic about juvenile delinquency, and drive-in restaurants got caught in the crossfire. Parents, teachers, clergy members, and law enforcement officials all pointed fingers at drive-ins as places that encouraged bad behavior among teenagers. The concerns were wide-ranging. Some adults worried that drive-ins provided unsupervised spaces where teenagers could engage in inappropriate behavior. Others felt that the car culture associated with drive-ins promoted reckless driving and street racing. Still others believed that drive-ins were where teenagers were exposed to drugs, alcohol, and other vices. There were frequent complaints about teenagers loitering at drive-ins, being too loud, playing music too loud, and generally disturbing the peace. Some neighborhoods tried to prevent drive-ins from opening nearby, citing concerns about property values and the types of young people who would congregate there. The connection between drive-ins and hot rod culture particularly worried adults. Teenagers who souped up their cars and raced them on public streets often hung out at drive-ins, and occasional accidents involving these young drivers would make headlines. The media was quick to draw connections between drive-in culture and reckless behavior, even when those connections were tenuous. Some communities imposed curfews, specifically targeting drive-ins, requiring them to close earlier on weeknights, or prohibiting teenagers under a certain age from being there. Without adult supervision, police would sometimes patrol drive-in parking lots looking for underage drinking or other illegal activities. Drive-in owners pushed back against these accusations, arguing that their establishments provided safe, supervised spaces for young people to socialize. They pointed out that teenagers hanging out at a well-lit parking lot with adult staff present was better than them, congregating in parks, empty lots, or other unsupervised areas. The debate about drive-ins and juvenile delinquency was really part of a larger cultural anxiety. About teenagers in general, the 1950s saw the emergence of a distinct youth culture that adults didn't fully understand or approve of. Teenagers had more independence, more money, and more free time than previous generations. And this made many adults uncomfortable. Looking back, most of the concerns about drive-ins seem overblown. The vast majority of teenagers who hung out at these places were just doing normal teenage things, socializing, eating, and listening to music. But the moral panic of the era meant drive-ins became scapegoats for broader societal concerns about youth culture. Some drive-ins had live entertainment, while most drive-ins just played music over speakers or left it up to customers to provide their own entertainment via car radios. Some establishments went the extra mile and offered live performances. These weren't elaborate shows, but they added an extra element of excitement that drew customers. Some drive-ins hired local bands to perform on Friday or Saturday nights. They'd set up a small stage or flatbed truck in the parking lot, and the band would play for a few hours. This was especially popular at larger drive-ins that had more space and could accommodate bigger crowds. The music was usually rock and roll or rockabilly, the genres that defined teenage culture in the 50s. Other drive-ins featured DJs who would host remote broadcasts from the parking lot. Local radio stations loved these setups because it gave them visibility, and the drive-ins benefited from the promotional value. Having a popular DJ on site was a great way to draw customers. Beauty pageants and car shows were also common forms of entertainment at drive-ins. Some restaurants would host Miss Car Hop competitions or Miss Drive-In contests where young women would compete for prizes and local fame. Car shows brought out the hot rod enthusiasts who would display their customized vehicles and compete for trophies during special occasions like holidays or the restaurant's anniversary. Drive-ins might bring in novelty, acts, jugglers, magicians, or even animal acts. Occasionally, these shows were usually brief, but they created memorable experiences that kept customers coming back. The entertainment served multiple purposes. It attracted customers, gave them a reason to stay longer and order more food, and it created a sense of community around the drive-in restaurants that offered entertainment, became destinations rather than just places to eat. Not all of this entertainment was officially sanctioned. Sometimes the entertainment was provided by customers, themselves impromptu drag races in the parking lot. After hours, groups of teenagers harmonizing doo-wop songs or couples dancing next to their cars with the radio playing. The car culture was everything you can't talk about. 1950s drive-ins without talking about car culture because the two were completely intertwined. Drive-ins existed because Americans were in love with their automobiles, and that love affair shaped every aspect of the drive-in experience. The 1950s was the golden age of American automotive design. Cars were big, flashy, and full of chrome. They had tail fins, white wall tires, and hood ornaments that looked like they belonged on a rocket ship. Owning a nice car wasn't just about transportation. It was about status and identity. Teenagers and young adults spent enormous amounts of time and money on their cars. They'd customize them with dual exhausts, lowered suspensions, custom paint jobs, and upgraded engines. Showing off your car at the drive-in was a big part of the social scene. The parking lot was essentially a car show every night. The type of car you drove said a lot about who you were. Hot rods and custom cars were for the rebellious types who were into rock and roll, and fast-living luxury cars suggested you came from money, or at least wanted people to think you did. Practical sedans marked you as sensible and mature, probably someone who'd be settling down soon. Drive-ins were designed specifically to accommodate and celebrate car culture. The parking lots were spacious with wide lanes to make it easy to show off your car. The car-centric service model, where you never had to leave your vehicle, elevated the car to central importance. You and your car were a unit. Some drive-ins even had specific nights dedicated to certain types of cars. Hot rod nights, where only customized cars were welcome, or nights for specific makes and models, like Ford Night or Chevy Night. These events turned the parking lot into a temporary car club, meeting the relationship between teenagers and their cars. In the 50s, it's hard for people today to fully understand. Cars weren't just transportation. They were freedom, privacy, and identity, all rolled into one. A car meant you could go where you wanted, when you wanted, without having to rely on parents or public transportation. This car culture eventually contributed to the decline of drive-ins as cars change in design. In the 60s and 70s, becoming smaller and more fuel efficient. The whole experience of drive-in dining changed. The window trays didn't fit as well. The spacious parking lots seemed wasteful, and the gas crisis made cruising seem irresponsible. Drive-ins had strict rules. Walking into a 1950s drive-in parking lot meant entering a space full of rules designed to maintain order among cars and teenagers. Customers had to buy something to stay and refresh their orders periodically, as loitering was not allowed. Behavior was closely monitored. Excessive horn honking, loud music, rowdiness, and street racing were prohibited. And some drive-ins even kept banned lists or hired security to enforce rules. Littering was taken seriously, with trash cans provided and fines or bans for those who ignored them. Age restrictions were common, especially late at night, with teens under 16 sometimes required to have adult supervision to reduce noise and complaints from neighbors. Dress codes existed as well, typically simple requirements like wearing a shirt and shoes, though some upscale drive-ins preferred more formal attire. These rules created a controlled, safe, and orderly environment, ensuring that the parking lot remained enjoyable for everyone while protecting both customers and staff. Women car hops faced unique challenges. Being a female car hop in the 1950s came with challenges beyond the physical demands of roller skating and balancing trays. Sexual harassment was rampant and normalized, with male customers making suggestive comments or asking for dates, while management rarely intervened. Uniforms, short skirts, and fitted outfits were designed to be attractive, which sometimes drew unwanted attention and assumptions about a car hop's character. Women had to navigate a tricky social balance, be friendly enough to earn tips but not too flirty to invite harassment, all while facing stigma from more conservative community members. Physical safety was also a concern, as car hops worked in poorly lit parking lots at night, approaching strangers' cars. Despite these difficulties, thousands of women took these jobs because they required no special training, offered decent pay through tips, and provided a sense of independence. Camaraderie among car hops helped them cope, creating a supportive network in a demanding and often hostile work environment. The menu boards were works of art. One of the most striking features of 1950s drive-ins was their massive illuminated menu boards, which combined neon lights, colorful graphics, and carefully chosen typography to create eye-catching displays. These boards served multiple purposes: advertising to passing traffic, guiding customers through orders and creating a fun, modern atmosphere. Some became local landmarks, referenced in directions, or used as meeting points. Design was taken very seriously. Owners hired professional sign makers and spent thousands to ensure colors were visible yet tasteful, fonts readable from moving cars, and neon tubes arranged to create animated effects, like a dripping hamburger or filling milkshake. Some boards simply listed menu items, while others depicted happy families eating or roller skating car hops delivering food. Maintenance was constant, with burnt-out neon or bulbs replaced regularly and grime cleaned off to keep signs vibrant. As drive-ins declined in the 60s and 70s, many boards were discarded or left to decay. Today, surviving vintage drive-in signs are collectible and often protected as historic landmarks, representing an iconic era of American commercial design. Drive-ins inspired a whole genre of music. The connection between drive-ins and rock and roll runs deeper than most realize. Drive-ins weren't just places for teenagers to listen to music. They inspired musicians and helped shape the genre itself. Early rock and roll songs often referenced drive-ins, cars, and teenage courtship, with artists like Chuck Berry, the Beach Boys, and countless rockabilly performers drawing directly from the culture. The soundscape of drive-ins, the tinny car radios, echoes across parking lots, and ambient engine noise also influenced how music was mixed and experienced. Drive-ins functioned as informal communal listening spaces where teens shared the thrill of new hits together, creating a collective musical experience that shaped taste and helped songs become hits. The culture provided endless lyrical material, showing off cars, first date jitters, and late-night rebellion all became recurring themes. Some musicians even worked at or frequented drive-ins, absorbing the energy, language, and social dynamics, which later surfaced in their music, making drive-ins a key incubator for rock and roll culture. The decline. Started in the 60s, the golden age of drive-ins didn't last long. By the early 1960s, many were already struggling, and by the decade's end, most had closed or transformed. The rise of fast food chains with drive-through windows offered speed and convenience that traditional drive-ins couldn't match, serving meals in minutes without window trays or tipping. Labor costs also pressured drive-ins, which relied on numerous car hops and kitchen staff, while assembly line methods allowed fast food chains to operate with fewer workers and lower prices. Other factors accelerated the decline. Rising real estate values made large parking lots seem wasteful. Changing car designs no longer fit old window trays, and teenage culture shifted toward new hangouts and interests. Some drive-ins tried to adapt with drive-thrus, updated menus, or modernized facilities, and a few succeeded. But for most, the combination of economic pressures, social changes, and evolving car culture made the classic drive-in model unsustainable, closing the curtain on an iconic era of American dining. Some original drive-ins still exist. Despite the sharp decline of drive-ins in the 1960s and 70s, a handful of original establishments from the 50s are still operating today, serving as beloved landmarks and living museums of American car culture dining. Icons like the Varsity in Atlanta and a few remaining A&W locations still use car hops and window trays, while chains like Sonic keep the tradition alive with a modern twist. What makes these surviving drive-ins remarkable is how little the core experience has changed. You still pull up, park, order from a menu board, and have your food delivered right to your car. These restaurants draw tourists and nostalgia seekers alike, offering a chance for new generations to experience something their parents or grandparents once loved. Running a traditional drive-in isn't easy. Costs are high, car hop work is specialized, and the business model doesn't scale. But dedicated owners keep them going. Their survival preserves a slice of American history that would otherwise exist only in photographs and memory. Looking back at 1950s drive-in restaurants reveals a world far more complex than just burgers and fries. These spots shaped youth culture, influenced music and design, and created a dining experience that has never truly been replicated. The strange facts, dangerous working conditions, secret slang, and cultural controversies remind us that the past wasn't as simple as nostalgia suggests. Yet, it also showcased the ingenuity and energy of the era. Drive-ins rose during a perfect moment in American history, when car culture boomed and teenagers were forging their own identity, giving young people a place to gather, socialize, and feel independent. Their decline reflects broader changes in American society, from our shift towards speed and convenience to evolving relationships with cars and public spaces. For those who lived it, the memories remain vivid. Neon lights on chrome, the scent of grilling burgers, and the thrill of a few dollars and a full tank.